Let's talk about the 23mm focal length. Okay, the 23mm is a great focal length. It's what I use every single day. In fact, this is my third video about 23mm. I originally got the 23mm f2, which I have in my hand right now. And this was the first one that I got, and I got this because the 35mm in full frame was my favorite focal length. I loved it. I loved doing portraits, but it was a little wider so I could get really creative with it. I could do street photography with it. I could do fine art stuff. You could just really do everything with it. What can't you do with a 23mm? I mean, you could do weddings. If I'm doing a wedding, I have one camera with a 23mm, the other camera has a portrait lens. Maybe I'm doing something else with a flat lay. You can actually use the 23 for a flat lay if you're not using the 16mm or something like that. You can use it for landscape photography. You can use it for portraits and lifestyle. It's really great for that because you can tell more of a story. You can get a little bit more of the background. Also add a little bit of distortion in the picture if you want to, angling it. It's not gonna give you too much distortion, but it'll give you more of a wide field of view. And then of course, it's amazing for street photography. This is the actual focal length that you're gonna have affixed to the X100V, which is like the most popular camera in the freaking world, the Fujifilm camera. I can't even get my hands on it. Do I really want one? I mean, I have an XE4, which is basically the next best thing, according to what everyone thinks. I personally like to actually change my lenses, so I like using the XE4 with everything. Oddly enough, I have that 1.4 affixed to my XE4 pretty much 99% of the time. So it's kind of a larger X100V, but it's great for street photography because it's just an amazing focal length. That's telling that that is the focal length on the X100V, and it's so popular. So I originally got this Fujifilm 23mm f2 as my first 23mm, and I did a video about that. Now the second one I got was the Viltrox 23mm 1.4, and the reason why I got that was because I couldn't really afford to buy the very expensive 23mm 1.4. So the next best thing, the next best thing was a 23mm. I still can't say 23mm like consistently all the time for some reason. Anyway, the 23mm from Viltrox was my go-to when it came to doing shoots with models and doing portraits. And I just loved doing the 23. It's like, it was just so amazing. It allows you to get a lot more of the background, tell more of the story, but because of the 1.4, you're getting a little bit more bokeh, more separation, all those things. So I had the 23 f2 and I had that Viltrox. Well, things kind of changed in the Fujifilm ecosystem when they came out with a new 23mm 1.4 WR. Now this is huge. First of all, the motors, when it came to, let me back up because I'm getting way ahead of myself. So the Viltrox had a really fast linear motor in it, and it's just as fast and as responsive as the f2, and I love that. Now the new 23mm f1.4 also has a new linear motor in it, so it's speedy fast, much faster than the old version. I'm not really sacrificing anything by having the Fuji version over the Viltrox, and it's weather resistant. But let's talk about the direct comparison between these two. Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, the f2. The f2 is part of a group of lenses called the Fujifilm lenses. If you know anything about them, they are a group of small, walk-around, light, easy-to-use lenses. And they have linear motors. They're very tough, very awesome, very quick, and they're tiny. So basically, there's a 16mm 2.8, an 18mm f2, the 23mm f2, 35mm f2, which I had, which was amazing. I used it in the studio because it was so small, compact, quick, and accurate and sharp. And then there's a 50mm f2, which I have not used, which I've heard amazing things about. I'd love to use that actually for street photography, but I don't have that one and haven't gotten my hands on it. But they're all inexpensive, tough, weather resistant, small, easy to use walk around lenses. So it's a huge allure when it comes to the small form factor of the Fujifilm ecosystem to have those little lenses. It's just amazing. Now, why would one want to get the larger, big, 23 millimeter f1.4s? Well, there's a few 1.4s that just came out that have these new linear motors and they're weather resistant, and that's huge. We have the 18 millimeter 1.4, the 23 millimeter 1.4, which we're talking about today, and you have the 33 millimeter 1.4. Now, a couple of older ones, but we won't talk about those just for the sake of keeping continuity for our little video here. But the 23 millimeter 1.4 was always more expensive. Well, it's because of the 1.4 aperture. So the real big difference between these two is, well, let's talk about that. First difference is obviously going to be the size. If you want something smaller, guess what? It's really tiny. This thing is like, look at that thing. Is that thing in focus? This thing is tiny, which makes it so great. You just throw it in a bag, throw it in there with your X-T5 and you're ready to roll. Now, the 23 millimeter 1.4 is not too big, but it's noticeably larger. Noticeably larger. I mean, it's like half the size of the f2. I mean, the f2 is half the size of the 1.4. That's what I meant to say. I'm not speaking correctly. Big, small, it's your use case, right? Which one do you prefer? Here's another thing, the aperture. Obviously, the f1.4 and the f2, there's gonna be a lot more light coming into this thing. Now you have more separation and you have better bokeh. So if you're doing a lot of portraits and you really want to do a lot more portrait work, I would say get the 23 1.4. It's going to make a huge difference. Now, if you're doing portrait work, but you don't feel like you really need all that kind of separation, maybe you're doing some urban streetwear or something like that, the 23 millimeter f2 is going to be great. That's not to say you have to have that separation. Some people actually prefer when you don't have as much separation. So it really depends on, what kind of photographer you are. For me personally, I like the 1.4. I also do a lot of indoor environmental lifestyle portraits. And so I need that low light performance out of the 1.4. It makes a huge difference to me. I get a little nervous when I slow down my shutter speed way too much, but some people can do that. Some real street photographers will really lower that shutter speed to get more light in there, and they can go all day with this f2, with any f2. Really, if you want to get the shot, you're going to figure out how to get the shot. It just makes it a little bit easier to get more light when you have that 1.4, right? So we've established that if you want more separation and you want a little bit better low light, you're going to go for the 1.4. The image quality is going to be basically pretty much on par, unless there's something about one of these lenses that gets you. And for me, it's the 23 millimeter 1.4. There's something about the quality. It's very sharp, and there's a micro contrast quality that is absolutely amazing. And I find the same thing when I use this for video. It's really crisp and very defined, and it pops. I don't know what to say. It's got character. Everything's got character, right? It has character. There's something about it. That's why I really want to get my hands on the 33 1.4, because a lot of people talk about the character of that lens. I can't seem to want to get rid of my 35 1.4 because of the character. There it goes, that word again, character. Everything's got character. You have to kind of get out there with both of these and see which one that you like using more. I really love the 1.4 for the micro contrast and the clarity or the sharpness of the photo. It's not over clinical when it comes to sharpness. It's pleasing. I like it. I just really like the 1.4. That's not to say that I don't like the images from the f2. I do. I went out with Paige and we went to Pfluger Bridge in Austin, Texas, and she was using the X-T5 with this f2 a newer body with an older lens, and I was using my XE4, an older body with the 1.4. And she took a picture of me that is probably one of my favorite pictures of me actually taking photos, and I actually put it on my YouTube channel. And I just love the separation, I love the background blur, I love the quality of the photo. I enjoyed the pictures from both of those lenses, both of those cameras. The 23mm on both sides actually just really performed, and to me, they look really great. So it's gonna be apples and oranges. What it really comes down to is size for your use case, and of course the elephant in the room, and that is price. Okay, so for the f2, we're looking at $449. I mean, that is really inexpensive for this little tiny powerhouse. Now, for the 1.4, we're looking at $899 on B&H. So that's a difference of like 450 bucks. That's a lot. That is a huge, huge price tag. If you're using this for work, the 1.4, I say get it. If you don't need to spend the $450, this f2 is going to do wonders for you, and it is going to just be a lens that you'll use for years and years and years to come. Me personally, the 1.4 has a magical look to it that I love using. But then after Paige was using this f2, the more and more I saw the photos that she did, the more and more I kind of want to go out with this with my XE4. I just want to, it's just small, it's cool, it's a badass lens. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for letting me rant and rave about the 23mm focal length and these two really, really, really amazing lenses. All right, you guys have an amazing, amazing day. Love and photography forever. Peace.